repairs. Forget the availability fee. That's all done. That's all in the past. If there is a catastrophic failure in those pipes right now, okay, how would it be paid for?
We currently have funds available in the utility fund to maintain the water system. In there, we've estimated we would have 12 water main breaks this year. We estimated $1,000 a break.
That's countywide, right?
No, sir. That was strictly in Caroline Pines. So we estimated in repair cost alone, we estimated $1,000 in repair cost per line, just to give us a good number. Most of our repairs are running $450 to $500, everything. It's staff time, vehicles, equipment. So we're not seeing a significant issue. They're all small lines. They're not 18-inch mains, 16-inch mains. They're small 4-inch, 6-inch, 2-inch lines. So significant cost. When you say a major event, most of the issues that we are finding are at joints. So the pipe itself is in good shape. We get down there, we get to the leak, it's a glued joint. They no longer even use glued joint because because of the depth that it's buried, it's very susceptible to freeze-thaw, which is expansion and contraction. So that glue is expanding and contracting. So when we get a call, we go out there and dig it up. 99% of the time, if it is in the main, it is a coupling. So we go out, we cut the coupling off, and we put a new piece in. So the pipe itself is in actually good shape. The problem is every 21 feet, there's a coupling along that line. So when you say something significant, when I get there, the pipe's good. I've got something I can go back to. If you look at the town currently, they've got nothing to connect to. Their pipe is collapsed, and every time they try to get something, it just keeps collapsing and collapsing. So I don't have that same kind of catastrophic issue that the town of Bowling Green has. I actually have good pipe to get to. I just got couplings to worry about.
I thought we were just talking about an expense, though, where we were saying that I heard $250,000, I heard $500,000. What is the expense? I guess
that is a replacement cost to go in and replace existing lines, to go in and upgrade to the AWWA standards.
We're saying that needs to happen. Is that what we're saying, that needs to happen?
It was always planned, envisioned to start collecting the availability fees or the service district fee during the 6th year. So after the 61st month, we would start the fee. We always envisioned those first couple of years that fee would be rather high. Right now we're charging $46.67, and you're going to be charging $26.51. So their water bill will be $73.18. If you were to start a fee during that 61st month at $40 a month, they will see a reduction in their bill of $6.67, and you would generate $173 that first 12 months. So there's a chunk of money that we could start designing into that 7th year.
Will that not put the construction behind, though? Because the $46.67 right now is not paying for the repairs.
It is not.
It is not repairs. So if there's no fee to pay for repairs, will that not kick the can down the road 4 or 5 years?
It will kick the upgrades down the road.
It'll kick the upgrades down the road.
That's correct.
And the second thing that I guess I have a concern about a little bit is regarding the fee, as opposed to we made it a sanitary district. Service district. I get them confused. We made it a service district, okay, with the purpose of the ability to put a special tax down, so that way the customers across the system aren't subsidizing their system.
That's correct.
Now we're saying what we're going to do is, well, for them we'll just do a fee.
We're proposing that.
We're proposing. So what happens the next time? Get another subdivision, okay, and some subdivision pops up where we decide that we're going to put another service district down. We've already now, I guess my concern is precedent. You set precedent in one. So if I set precedent in Caroline Pines saying, well, I'm going to do this, it's kind of hard for me to do in another subdivision that's on public utilities to go with the real estate tax when I'm doing a bill.
I believe you're actually doing the residents a favor by doing it this way. I would say that the service district is your insurance policy. By doing this, they're paying a monthly fee instead of being hit by a large increase twice a year, that now instead of them paying their $700, $800 real estate bill or whatever it is, you're talking about to generate this type of money, you're talking a 35-40 cent increase on taxes to generate that $170,000, which they'll be paying on part of their water bill. So this would be their water bill. We'd set it up, and then we can track that money for every bill of what comes in, and we can set that money aside to be able to use for repairs in there. It's just a way for us to generate that money and to be able to charge monthly instead of twice a year.
Now, you said earlier in the conversation, though, you had made a point it's going to be harder for you to track.
It is, and what I mean by that is if I had a particular code that said it's this amount, so I'm basically going to have to say I've got X amount of customers, they paid X amount of customers paid. So it's not like I can charge a separate fee. If I could charge a separate fee, I could track that. It would automatically go into a general ledger code, and I'd know exactly what it is. Now I've got to say, okay, I've got X amount of customers this month. Each one of those customers paid that $40. This is how much is in there this month. And each month I would have to track what's in there. So it's a little bit more manual to do. You'll be really close, but if you're off a customer, it would be $4 one way or another. We would say that money's there. We would know how much money we've collected. We would know how much money we've set aside. But to come down to that finite number, to say we're to the penny of how much we actually collected out of Caroline Pines, I think it's going to be very difficult to tell you by the penny. But I think we'll be within $1,000 of being able to track, plus or minus, this is what we've got for that money collected.
Okay, so are you saying right now, and it's a couple more questions and I'll let others ask. So are you saying right now that we should not tack on another fee in Caroline Pines at this time? Or are you saying we should tack on a fee in Caroline Pines on the water bill right now?
It is my opinion that we are not going to have any major events that is going to cost the citizens of the utility system additional money to fix those lines. So in order to benefit the citizens in there, one of the things that we had talked about is not charging this fee until the 61st month, because they're already paying $46 more than the rest of our water customers due to a situation, unfortunately, they didn't have any control over. So I would say we would wait to the 61st month would be my recommendation, and start charging that higher fee to start putting some of that money in the bank.
Is there, so two more questions then. Is there anything wrong with those lines right now that is affecting water quality in Caroline Pines? Is water quality being affected by having old pipes under the ground? Because you can't have it two ways. You can't say, hey, our water quality is terrible and we're kicking the can down the road. So if you know, I mean, I don't want that someone coming to us and say the water quality is terrible. Well, we have an option right now to fix that.
Yeah, our water quality, we literally are down to maybe 2 calls a month for water quality issues compared to dozens.
In Caroline Pines?
In the whole system.
Okay.
I mean, compared to, well, I mean, we used to get dozens a week. I mean, we have really taken care of the water quality issue. The problem I got in Caroline Pines is I've got no way to flush some of those lines. So when I start upgrading those lines, I will be putting flushing hydrants at the end of those dead ends so I can move some of that water around and flush those lines. That's really my issue now, is not being able to flush it. The lines that are in there, 90% of them are glued coupling pipe. There are some sections down in the bottom that have been replaced with AWWA approved C900 pipe, 4-inch, 6-inch, and 1 8-inch main. And there are places that we have found are electrical conduit. We have now found, talking with the different staff members, what has happened is they're installing, contractors are out there installing lines, they would accidentally hit the water line. They would take a piece of electrical conduit out of the truck and they would fix the line with electrical conduit. So we have found it's not actually long pieces, going down a road. It's actually sections where somebody has hit it and they've used that to replace. So those are issues that we've got in the system. We don't know where those are, and the only way to take care of those is start replacing sections at a time, and eventually we'll get all those.
Okay, and then the last question I have is this. Are you saying that if you're suggesting what you're suggesting, you're saying that we're not going to be, because utilities can become can be kind of a hot potato with us, and it can become a topic. Are you saying that in the Caroline Pines subdivision, the people in Ladysmith Village or the people in wherever it is being serviced by our public utilities is not going to be subsidizing the Caroline Pines system in the next 5 years because the Caroline Pines is going to be paying for it? Is that what we're saying?
Right now it's self-sufficient. I mean, if you look at...
So it will continue to be self-sufficient even with the pipes under the ground. We're not going to be looking to...
From an operational standpoint, yes, sir.
From an operational.
Mr. Cully,
we've got $2 million in debt, so if you're trying to pay the debt with the availability fee and operations costs, we won't be able to do that.
No, I'm not.
Right, so from operation, for me to operate the system, I'm
talking about from any additional capital costs that you have in Caroline Pines. Operations is different than capital. I'm talking about any capital costs you have in Caroline Pines.
Yeah, I have nothing, there's nothing that is on my radar that is concerning me that we're going to have any issues in the next 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cully, you wanted to add to that?
I'd ask Mr. Emerson this question. If we were to have a catastrophic failure and need $100,000, $200,000 because we needed to fix something, we could go borrow money for the service district and then put the tax rate on to pay that debt service back. So we're not without, the service district is a fallback, so we're not sitting here where we would be stuck, or it would fall on the rest of the utility customers to pay that. And so I think we're covered. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't think we're going to have one. But if we were, we have a mechanism in place to borrow the money for the service district and then have a public hearing and start assessing them. Whatever. I mean, it might be 25 cents, 50 cents, whatever. It depends on how much you have to borrow to fix the problem and over what term.
That's what I refer to as the insurance policy. I guess I should have explained a little more, but we've always got that to fall back on.
Mr. Underwood?
Mr. Shebel, if we had to dig a well to provide service to Lake Caroline or another area of the county, who pays for that?
The utility fund.
The utility fund generates money on its own? Who pays the money into the utility fund?
The users,
Which users?
the utility users.
Are they separated by area, or are they just?
No, sir. Right now, they're all classified as Caroline County users. We used to have a sanitary
Except the
district that was
Caroline
in
Pines.
Wilbur.
Wait a minute.
Caroline Pines has a separate district, but they
I understand
are
that. Just
treated
hold on.
as a county utility customer and fall under all of the same rules and regulations. We do have a service district, a service district set up there. We also have a sanitary district set up in Milford that's not being utilized. We also have a sanitary district set up in Lake Caroline that we're not utilizing.
Who pays the salaries of the employees of the utility district, of the Caroline County utilities?
The funds come from the operational revenues from utility bills,
How are those revenues generated?
through the utility bills that are issued.
Only utility bills?
For operational
No.
or debt also.
Oh,
The debt, right now, there is funds that come out of the general fund to help offset the cost for debt
comes from the
service.
taxpayers.
To cover the
Right?
debt, yes, sir.
Correct. Comes from the taxpayers. So the reality of it is, here we are cutting off a certain area saying that we don't want to take responsibility. Now, the folks in Caroline Pines understood when they entered into an agreement to run the line to Caroline Pines that they were going to be charged X number of dollars, and they understood they got a pretty good break on connection fee. Correct?
That's correct.
And that's really where the problem started, because we didn't have enough foresight to see that we needed more money in terms of availability fee, or we wouldn't be at this juncture, would we?
Actually, the recommended rate was $8,000.
That's not my question.
The discussion of the board was agreed upon.
My question
$2,800.
is, if we had increased the availability fee, we wouldn't be at this juncture, would we?
No, sir. Well, as far as paying debt service, no, sir. It was always intended that the customers within Caroline Pines that are in a 46-year-old system would have to upgrade their lines, as
I
they're
understand
twice
that.
as old as the county system.
All right. The cost of upgrading this utility system or the lines in Caroline Pines, you say it's a couple $100,000
Per phase,
per phase. What's the total cost then? Mr.
about $2.8 million
Right.
over a 30-year period.
But we've already financed part of that with the folks there, is that correct?
We financed $2 million in round numbers to run a water main from Como Church to Caroline Pines.
2 million minus or 2 million plus?
$101,997,000 and some change is what we spent on the water line running to Caroline Pines.
Now, you made another statement about the lines, and quite interesting. You said we've had 6 breaks in Caroline Pines, I believe, over the last
We've had 16 since we've taken over.
16. But how many of those were faults of the system versus faults of contractors or other issues?
We've had 2 of them that were actually contractor issues. We had one of them where a well house, actually, the heater inside the well house went bad, and we had a break in there. So we had 3 of them that were actually issues that I would say weren't really typical of what you would see in a water system. Out of that, so you reduce that down to 13 of them. Out of those 13, 5 of them were actually mains. And when I say mains, it could be a 2-inch line, 4-inch line, 6-inch. And the rest were actually the service lines that run between the main and the meter.
If I were to hook up to the system today, What would it cost me?
$8,000.
$8,000, and what did the residents of Caroline Pines pay to hook up to that?
$2,800.
So they got a pretty substantial discount. didn't
That's
they?
correct.
So I go back to my original statement. Have we been a little smarter in terms of cost? We wouldn't be at this junction. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Akers?
I take a different view than what Mr. Underwood has just talked about, the board being a little smarter. The fact is, I think the board had empathy for the people that lived in Caroline Pines and saying most of them couldn't afford the $8,000, and $2,800 was a number that was agreed to by their board down there as to what they felt like their people could afford. I'm not going to argue that we impose any type of increase on Lake or Caroline Pines at this point, but to go back and to say that, and I've heard this reference before about wells in Lake Caroline. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we dug wells. Lake Caroline is coming off of that system in 6 months or 8 months or 9 months or whatever the time frame is. Are we going to fill those wells in? Absolutely not. We're going to use those wells. They're going to serve the future. So to say we paid whatever the number was for wells for Lake Caroline is a total is total untruth. It is just no factual. It is. It is no factual law.
Not untrue.
Well, that's your opinion. My opinion is it is untrue because we're not going to fill the wells in. We're going to still use them.
To service because you didn't have enough water to service it.
We
It was
had
an
water.
emergency.
We
for
had
the last
water.
4 years.
Yeah, we had water, but we also
We had enough
used
water.
water out of those wells to service other areas of the county. So to say it's Lake Caroline is certainly
I'm
not a
just saying,
fact. It is.
you
It's
can't
totally
treat
untrue.
areas differently. That's what I'm telling you.
You wanted the service district.
Underwood,
You got
let
the service
Mr. Akers
district.
finish.
Go with it.
Let Mr. Akers finish.
Thank you. It is a fact that we've always said that the county, and it's no secret, the county has been helping to subsidize the water and the sewer debt for some years. But look at the revenue that comes into this county. You can talk to Mrs. Carter. Mr. Underwood, give me a chance to finish, then you can make your comments. But talk to Mrs. Carter, and she will tell you how much revenue is generated in Ladysmith and in Carmel Church. And it wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the water and the sewer. If it wasn't for the utilities, that tax revenue would not be coming in. So what do? You close the county down? I don't think so. Again, I'm not going to argue to impose a tax on Lake Caroline Pines at this point, but I do believe at some point, since that's the decision that everybody made to go with the service district, they've got to pay for it, and they agreed to it.
Thank you, Mr. Akers.
Mr. Chairman, we agreed to a service district because it was the recommendation of our acting director of utilities.
Correct.
That's-
I mean,
that's
and I
why we-
think
that's-
the will of
so-
the board then, and the will of Caroline Pines, because their president and their board were here and said they couldn't sustain the $1 million it was going to cost them to
Correct.
do it. They implored us to take over the system. They knew it was going to cost them more, and they didn't have the money. They had not saved the money over the 40-some years that they were there. They said, please take over the system. We know it's going to cost us additional funds. We know we're going to have to pay for it. We don't have an issue with it. We can't come up with the amount of money up front that it's going to take to do it. And there was a lot of discussion on this board. It took 6 months, because I was here, to say, we'll do it on the condition, and I'll tell you what, in 2010, I wrote an op-ed piece that said we needed to adopt a service area to actually make that work because we couldn't afford the 2.5-mile extension for those customers with the little use that line was going to get. I'll pull it out for you. So that discussion was had. I don't disagree. I mean, Mr. Akers has got a point. And I'm going to go a little further. Let me take you down the path that I see. We spent $1.6 million from the general fund last year for utility debt. Plain, flat, and simple. That's what we paid out of the general fund. And it's been that for the last couple of years or more.
Absolutely.
It's going to cost $2.8 million to redo all the pipes in Caroline Pines up to where we took them water. Correct, Mr. Schiebel?
That's correct, over 30 years.
And I'm not even arguing the time frame. I'm just saying that's what it's going to take. So we're still looking at additional costs. There's no way we can replace everything in there if we at some point don't employ some method to put those funds aside. The other question I have is, will we ever recoup the repair costs that we're spending in Caroline Pines, Or is that in the, because the cost of doing business in there, we collect $139,000 in revenue per year from Caroline Pines, or 129?
I can run the numbers real quick.
Somewhere
I don't know off the
between
top
there,
of my head.
but it costs us about $73,000 to produce the water in terms of electrical costs and everything, chemicals and everything else. So the delta is that is $40,000 or $50,000, which you're using for the maintenance over there, pipe repair, and whatever else needs to be done. So there is a cost of doing business that we all forget about the utility system. We pay the workers, we've got to pay to produce the water, we've got sand filters we've got to maintain. I'm not levying this against any one place. It's not Lake Caroline, it's not Caroline Pines, it's not the rest of the system. But the bottom line is the cost to produce water and to get it to everybody has a cost, and the general fund is bearing the brunt of the debt service right now. And I think from that perspective alone, we need to look at how do we relieve, because the general fund affects all of us up here. Every district here is paying for it, whether
That's
you're
correct.
utilities or not.
That's correct.
The school debt that
Every
we took
district.
on, the school debt we took on, that
paid for.
$1.6 million would have covered it completely.
That's correct.
So, and I'm not levying any blame, I'm just saying that at this point, we've got to do all we can to make the utilities come as close to even as we can. And to do that, Mr. Underwood, I know you didn't want to vote for utility increase, I understand why, Mr. Akers, but I know that we've been hit, Mr. Shebel and I have talked about this, that getting grants, it's cost us money because our water rates aren't high enough. They see it as county subsidized. So we've got to start to move in a direction that makes that whole, not the sewer side, but the water side more productive in terms of what we spend and what we take in. So I think we're moving in a good direction. We need to have this discussion so that it's on the table, and I think it needs to be on the agenda next year for the budget session about what we're going to do with Caroline Pines, because it's something we've got to watch. I understand the sensitivity.
The question is not that, is there a need to generate funds, Mr. Chairman? That's not the question. The question is how and when we do it. That's the question.
And that's why we're having the discussion.
Well, so I'm saying that's what the discussion should be. We shouldn't sit here and just arbitrarily say, this is how we're going to do it. It should take some forethought. Mr. Shebel presented a plan when we first borrowed the money for Caroline Pines. You presented us a spreadsheet in terms of what it was going to cost to operate the system, and when the system was going to begin to be positive in terms of funding. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that plan has been altered because when we put the new wells online, we did not have to run the wells that were in Caroline Pines. So we are not running any of the wells down there, which would have been very costly to run those. So those numbers have actually come down from the original projection because of the new wells.
So what I'm saying, there was a plan to generate funds to do what we talked about, to repair the lines. That was part of the plan that you presented to this board. So there was a plan in place. To come back now and arbitrarily say, well, they've had a break and it's cost us $6,000 basically for those breaks. Now we need to subsidize and begin to grow this large amount of money. I disagree. I absolutely disagree. I think there's a plan in place. Let's let it come to fruition. If it doesn't work, then we come back and talk about it.
I think this was a discussion point. It was probably for me because we have not, I saw some things in the budget that I wanted to ensure that we covered. I think that the service district is something that we need to pay attention to in terms of, and I understand your point about the tax increase and what they're paying for connection fee, but I think some of them are under the illusion we're going to go in there and start fixing lines at some point and replacing them, and when their water quality goes down, they're going to start complaining. We can't flush those lines. There's very little we can do with that system, and I think a lot of folks don't realize what their water quality problems are. And a line break for them may actually be a blessing because it flushes the line, to be honest with you.
We use each of the well sites as flushing points, but
that's not the house connections, that's sediment in the pipe, that's, we're going to have problems down the road. And all I'm saying is that this discussion, I don't think everybody realized that the upgrades in there are going to cost $2.8 million. And I think that's a number we need to focus on, because with those few customers, what it's going to take to raise that, to do that, is not trivial. It's just not, I mean, that's more than we spent to run water out there.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to be, kind of agree with, at least with you, in the sense that I think that we need to start sooner rather than later to start collecting that revenue.
And, you know, if we want to wait another budget cycle and another water cycle, I just think the discussion need to be had, because I think some of us are under the impression we're already collecting on that tax district. And I found out in the budget process we were not.
Let me
Mr. Akers? Sure.
What would happen if we went back to the people in Caroline Pines and said, okay, we're going to extend your payment of $46 for another year or 2 years or what have you. Take some of the money that's now going toward that debt and put into a fund to generate funds for breaks and for things such as that. Is that something that we can do? We cannot do that.
No, they've signed, it's a
They've
promissory
signed
note.
I know, but I mean, if you went back and get another agreement signed, the whole 9 yards, you'd have to go through the process again. My question is, can we use that money for repairs and things like that?
Well, money's fungible. I mean, you're getting the money, you could use it. I mean, the same effect would be,
I
to
know.
some extent, what Joey's talking about. If you
But we would
you would extend it, you could, you know, if you took the $46 that
Yes.
they're paying now and put that into a fund to do repairs, I mean, you could, and then extend it by 2 years or 3 years or whatever, the $46 payment, you could extend it just by tacking it on to, you let them pay the rest of the 3 years of the $46, then you do 2 years of the base fee increase that Joey's talking about. That becomes essentially the availability fee, and the first 2 years of the availability fee goes into the repair. I mean, it's fungible money. So yeah, you could do that. I don't think you need to go back and do the agreement.
The one problem that I see is the people that have connected later that paid the $8,000 would not be in this fund that would then be repairing, because they've paid their $8,000. They're not paying the $43 a month. They've paid that in the construction cost of their house. So the only way you could gather all those together would actually be to assess.
Well, that, or with the base fee that he's talking about.
But they're not paying that.
They would in the 3 years. Everybody with a property in that area is going to pay that in taxes.
Right, in 3 years.
Whenever you put it onto their bill, yeah.
I was just thinking in terms of trying to get some money into a fund to help with the repairs and to start the collection of replacement that Celia's wanting, but still not impose an additional debt on the people in Lake Caroline. I understand Caroline Pines, 11% increase in the real estate tax rate. They just received tonight another $1.05, $1.18 or whatever the number is into their water bill, and now you're going to tack another $25 or $30 or $20 or 10 cents a hundred onto their real estate tax. There are not many people that can afford that, to be quite honest with you. A 21-cent increase in your real estate taxes is, to me, is not reasonable. Right.
Let me
And we could get started sooner, as Mr. Black said. We could get monies into that fund sooner rather than later if we had some way of extending out to 7 years or whatever the number is to get money into it.
One of my suggestions is that we've not done this, but we need to have a water plan meeting. We need a work session to talk about it, and I think that would help do a lot of this. Can we talk with Mr. Thomas when he gets back about actually setting up a work session for a water plan? Because I think that would help some of this. We're doing this sort of singly as an item, but I'd also like to say that during next year's budget session is to just put this on to talk about so that we have some more data to go forward with, because I think this is a question of what do we have, how much do we know, and what direction are we going? Any other thoughts from the board?
I guess my question is, what exactly with this being on the agenda tonight? Because it says for discussion, okay, action, ordinance. What exactly is staff, and what exactly are we supposed to be doing tonight? Are we supposed to be setting a rate for them? Are we supposed to just a discussion? Or, I mean, what exactly was supposed to come out of this?
We just wanted to give you there had been some discussion the last time about maybe we could have some sort of separate fee. So we worked with Ben to find out what that would be. The only thing that we can do is change their base rate by some dollar amount, $40, $4, whatever. That would require a public hearing. If you want to assess them